At this time of year, bells may jingle, but Pompey's chime, because Old Lang's flying. Sheffield Wednesday keep on rolling, and warning, this episode may contain Job lighting. Bellingham excelling again, sending Sunderland into winter wonderland. In League One, Charlton score 5 at Sixfields. Orient express themselves at Oakwell, while Huddersfield's Terriers are very good boys, very good boys. 5-0 winners at Cambridge. In League 2, it was Mange 2 at Rodney Parade. Newport, new sport. 2 hat-tricks in a 6-3. Fuck me. Elsewhere, Notts and Jatta clatter Bantams and Donny Paul Tranmere's pants down. That and more in the Not the Top 20 podcast, the EFL's weekend recap. I'm Ali Maxwell, today joined by Sky Sports EFL presenter and motorcycle enthusiast, Hull's angel, David Prutton. Hello.
That is, take a bow, son. Stand up, take a bow, sit down, crack on.
Kiss
Bellingham
badge.
Excelling again. It's just a little bit. It's akin to potentially sitting there waiting for the most wonderful thing to happen that you've listened to so many times, and then sitting there waiting for the most wonderful thing to happen. You said it, and it is. It's a work of art, a thing of beauty. A round of applause, sir.
Thank you, David. It's just words. It's a busy festive period for you, so thank you for joining the show. I know you're a huge fan and a weekly listener.
Correct.
We are also former colleagues of a few years on Sky Sports, mainly on Friday nights, where we had a bit of fun, I think it's fair to say. David's going to steer us through the EFL weekend recap, but we have to say a huge welcome to the team. Welcome to the NTT20 family. Nico Ellick is the son of George Ellick. He was born early last week. He has arrived into a world with a formidable older sister in Eva, who is, just over 2 years old. 2 sensational parents in George and his much better half. And I mean, we haven't spoken publicly over the last few months about the fact that we've just had a baby each within the space of 4 weeks of each other, David Prutton. It's insane. What are we doing?
It's amazing. I mean, this must be one of the most fertile podcasts going. It's wonderful, mate. And hearing this and knowing about little babies appearing and having seen mine that are now 15 and 13 and not little babies anymore, I can just imagine the chaos. You look not too tired. I'm sure George right now is pretty knackered, but that's all part of it, mate. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to you. When I'd listened and I'd heard and I'd seen the fact that you were taking time off, to go and look after baby, whatever. I thought it was just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And we've chatted before without kind of betraying any personal trust. We've had some nice, deep and meaningful chats, and I know just how much this part of your life means to you, mate. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so excited that Nico Ellick and Matilda Maxwell will grow up being friends, and hopefully they'll take over the business at some point. That's the plan. The NTT20 Academy starting to churn out superstars, superstar broadcasters of the future. Hopefully, congratulations to George, and thank you all the listeners for your support, your kind messages, both to myself a couple of weeks ago and to George last week as well, and just for your patience. We were excited about having babies, I think it's fair to say, but we really wanted to keep the show on the road, and thanks to the incredible kindness of a few people on the pod, from Matt Watts to Dave Jones to Max Rushton to Colin Murray, now to Prutz, but also off screen as well. Dave Walker's been a massive help to us on the production side, and the whole NTT20 team have really mucked in to allow George and I to spend a little bit of time with our babies. So thank you to everyone. It's a crazy time at the moment, Christmas on the way, and hopefully you have been able to continue to enjoy Not the Top 20 covering the EFL as best we can. Let's do that now. Prutz,
yes,
I'm going to hand over to you.
Super duper, and the fact that you've just reeled off who's been on this has just instantly made my good people, top broadcasters, nice men. None of those things apply to me, so let's crack on. I think the best place to start, though, would be with the top 2, because there's some serious pace being set in Yorkshire, and very formidable in the sense of what I'm seeing from Chris Wilder and Sheffield United. Let's go with the top of the tree first, Sheffield United, because the mix at the moment for me is glorious. You've got the kind of sock down sexiness of the O'Hares and the Davies, and you've got the rolled up sleeves of the Souters and the Jack Robinsons, and the melding together. We know he knows how to climb out of the Championship. This feels to me like a little bit of a different concoction, but it's getting the same result.
Yeah, I think that's something that I'm finding really refreshing or just interesting or pleasing about this Sheffield United team, is that we often pigeonhole managers, and there's a number of different ways that we do this, but even like tactically we do this, where if you've seen a manager do a thing with a team, you kind of think, well, that's their philosophy. They'll always play that formation. Wherever they go, they'll play that sort of style. And I think with Chris Wilder, and we have to mention his assistant Alan Knill as well, because he gets a lot of credit for the tactical look of any team that they manage together. It's just cool to me that, you know, they were trendsetters with the 3-5-2 that they won promotion out of the Championship with the overlapping centre-backs, you know, being the kind of most notable part of that, and then finishing in the top half in the Premier League with a system that did kind of take the Premier League by surprise, by storm to an extent. So it's quite cool that they're now top of the Championship, picked up more points than any other team, keeping an absurd amount of clean sheets and scoring goals too, in a different shape, in a 4-2-3-1, and even the way that they set up with that, you know, with Harmer often playing nominally in a left wing role, which, you know, has a lot of people raising eyebrows. Surely that's not where you get the best out of Gus Harmer. We saw him playing in a more all-action, dynamic central midfield role at Coventry. You know, are you getting the best out of him playing him here? Well, yes, I think so. Harmer's been one of the best players in the Championship this season, is seemingly loving his football playing in that position. And B, it's not all about the individual. It's about the team. It's about the blend of the 11 players. And when you have Harrison Burrows as your left back, you probably want someone doing Harmer-type things from that tucked-in position, and you get the benefit of the width and the delivery from the left side, but you also get the kind of extra body in central areas with the quality that Harmer has. So,
the point you're saying there about new and interesting things, it's inherently interesting, the non-newness of it. It's because it's consistency, Ali, you know that gets you promoted. And it's another thing to say, well, they do this. It's one thing, to say they do this. It's quite another to say that we're going to be able to stop it, because that's what success is built on. It's consistency of delivery, which is exactly what he's got, Chris, with Sheffield United. And absolutely going back to what you're saying there about pigeonholing managers, a couple of questions about his time at Borough, his time at Watford, obviously, and having spoken to him, and I know that Colin mentioned it last week about the kind of grit of what he is like as a person, Chris. That he is a highly ambitious manager, They don't get to the Premier League, make a bit of cash and sit back and go, done. No, not men like him. He keeps coming and coming and coming. You saw his reaction after the win against Sheffield Wednesday. Absolutely, to his core, meant the world to him. But doing it with the players that he's got, I mean, the goals from Kiefer, he's an extremely talented footballer. Obviously, it's put into sharp focus from a Cardiff City point of view, looking at him score. That first goal to be brutally honest, did I think he had that in his locker? He quite clearly has. Getting ragdolled by two defenders, taking a touch away from goal, and then finding the opposite top corner, and then the other one, which was nicely kind of disguised into the bottom corner. They're ticking so many boxes defensively, attack-wise, and the way that they go about it, because this isn't that version of Sheffield United. This is very much Chris Wilder's Blades 2.0, and even take away the fact that obviously with the points deduction, they would be even further ahead and looking even healthier at the very top of the division.
Yeah, and I suppose the new news, if you like, is that the Telegraph reported last week that the US consortium, led by Stephen Rosen, their takeover of the club is set to be completed. Announcement imminent. Deal worth more than £100 million. I feel like we've been waiting for this for at least a year, if not more. Massive news for the stability of the club, for the general feeling of the fan base, and for support for Chris Wilder. You have to think as well. Leeds 4, Oxford 0. It gets to a point where I actually had to kind of I had a bit of a go at myself this morning, because I was like, this is just there's nothing to say here. This is so standard. This is exactly what we expected. No shots on target for Oxford. Leeds winning 4-0 at home. And I'm like, yeah, winning 4-0 at home, away, anywhere is should never just be like, oh yeah, we expected that, so let's not go too big on it. Like, what they are doing at Ellen Road is quite remarkable. I can't remember dominance quite like it at the moment. You know how you can listen to a podcast at sort of quicker speeds, like 1.5 times speed. That's what it looks like when Leeds attack like this. If you give them any space to play into, if you give the ball away in your own half, as Oxford did a couple of times, they are so quick, but it's quick and skillful. It's quick with combination play, and that three behind the striker, Solomon, Aronson and James, they're just so deadly at the moment.
I think as well, it's that spread of goals that they're working into the play. I mean, Jayden Bogle, wonderfully taken goal, nice little 1-2 in the box, great footwork, bottom corner that he found. You mentioned the speed. Dan James, of course, being that whippet that's ahead of all the other whippets that we've seen across the Championship, and Leeds at home in the Championship. I remember listening to the podcast a few weeks ago when you were talking about, it was the weekend where there was a lot of FA Cup fixtures as well, but the shortest odds in that weekend was Leeds against Plymouth, was it? Like way beyond any of the kind of non-league versus whatever we were looking at, and that goes to show just how powerful they are at home. Questions, of course, come with regards to what they do on the road, which so far, well, you've got to say so far, given where they are in the division, hasn't hamstrung them. Yes, you've got teams potentially breathing down the neck, but I bumped into Daniel Farker in Sainsbury's in Harrogate last week, so I
incredible
crept up on him, and we'd done the Preston game, and alluded to the fact that Leeds might have got away with one, and he was very gracious. I mean, I wasn't there for 1 second telling him how tactically he should be changing it. Well, he's got a trolley full of Actimel. I kind of went, Daniel, that's a lot of Actimel for one man. And his family are coming across for Christmas, so apparently the Farkers love Actimel. They've got cracking gut health, so there's a lot to be very pleased about with how the future may look for Daniel Farker and Leeds. But I asked him, because you'll have this privilege as well when you get to speak to managers and players and ex-players and ex-managers. It's busy, Christmas is busy, yes, football's busy, blah blah blah, but I just said, do you enjoy it still? And he just kind of laughed and said, yeah, I love it. And we mentioned the fans are very demanding, the expectations high, and what that comes with a huge football club like Leeds, and that's why it's such an attractive job. And because I'd referenced the fact that I'd seen the Southampton game the week before where that banner was unfurled at St Mary's, Russell Martin, RM, get out of our club, yet we were all stood there watching the playoff final where Southampton were glorious. It was a huge love-in. They put Leeds to bed relatively straightforwardly, didn't they? Let's be honest. Yeah. They were very, very competent in that. And Daniel just had a wry smile. He said, yeah, that's what it is. It's not... Yeah. Hopefully it's not... When that attention does come, it's not me personally. It's the manager. We love you, Mr. Manager. We hate you, Mr. Manager. Get out, do one. And he understands what that is. I'm not saying for 1 second that's what he's getting from Leeds at all, but those question marks come.
That aspect of managing Leeds, I think he has excelled at. We've seen a lot of managers manage Leeds and struggle with the pressure and the expectation. You know, you say you're not saying for a minute he's getting that sort of stick from Leeds fans. I mean, there is an extreme section of the fan base, and you never know what percentage it is because, you know, these are the people that shout loudest on social media, so they're just the most visible. But last week in our mentions after the draw at Preston, you know, the amount of people saying, you know, this away form is so unacceptable, he's got to go, he's got to change things. You know, we missed out last season, and if we don't buck up our ideas, we're going to miss out again this season. And you do just think, you know, what can he possibly do? You know, it's not a video game. It's not easy, and he's built a very, very good, very, very consistent team.
Again, knowing Chris like I do, knowing that he doesn't mind winding up a fan base like he does, he's loving the fact that they're top with Leeds snapping at the heels, and if it maintains that, then we're in for a treat, because obviously you've got teams, as I said, very much nipping at their heels with Burnley and Sunderland. The question with Burnley and are slightly different because the expectation levels are not a million miles apart, but there's a presumption that Burnley should do it because Burnley can do it, but they're not doing it like Vincent did it. But Scott will say, yeah, but we're winning games and we've got some very, very good players in the ranks. And the question that's then thrown at Sunderland of how they go about it with this quote-unquote young team. I mean, it seems to be bizarrely getting younger, which is amazing, really, isn't it? But expectation levels, as I said, given how they both started, aren't a million miles from each other. Would you say that?
I'm kind of excited about the fact that it seems like this top four might be breaking away from the pack, like an iceberg in the Antarctic. Maybe a bad metaphor. I think I'll steer clear of that sort of stuff, because there's now 6 points between Sunderland in fourth and Blackburn in fifth, and Burnley beating Watford. Their fans have got to be giving thanks to Josh Brownhill this festive season.
Yes.
Putting a Josh Brownhill on top of the tree, I think, at home in Burnley, because as a player, as a leader, as a driving force, kind of both literally on the pitch from midfield and very much figuratively as well, he's just having a hell of a season. And he set up Jadon Anthony for the first goal. Anthony's their second top scorer. He's only scored 3 goals. So, goals have clearly been an issue for them. Finding individuals to score regularly hasn't happened, except for Josh Brownhill. He scored a magnificent second.
It's gorgeous.
Left
gorgeous.
foot, curling, top corner.
That's the one too.
Yeah, that puts him on 8 goals for the season. So they really do owe Brownhill a hell of a lot. I will just make the point that having kind of dug out Scott Parker and specifically Burnley's attacking underlying numbers early in the season, I think it's worth pointing out and being fair that they have improved. And I said, look, the expectation is a team like this will improve as the season goes on, but not every team does, and so you can't just assume that it will. It has done. I've looked at FB Ref. They've played 22 games. I've split them in half, and you can see that in the first 11 games, compared to the second batch of 11 games, the attack has got about 20% better in terms of non-penalty XG, and the defence about 20% better as well. So on both fronts, Parker's Burnley have improved as the season's gone on, and that's how they've been able to kind of maintain the pressure at the top of the table. And Sunderland, they're doing things differently from the start of the season as well. They were seeing out games so nicely, getting ahead and just seeing them out with minimal fuss. And now it's a little bit different. They have conceded first, I think, in the last 4 games, and they've won from behind 3 times out of 4. So we're seeing character and personality and ability to handle setbacks, which sometimes the sort of thing that you worry about with a young team. Absolutely not. They seem to, this group of young and younger players, do have kind of mature mentality individually and seemingly as a unit as well. Coming back from behind to beat Norwich, we saw a red card from Jose Cordoba. We did kind of, I remember talking about him after his first game and highlighting a little bit of rashness. With you probably want a centre back pairing where you have one front foot and one kind of sweeper. He's definitely the front footed type, and sometimes you want that. You can dominate a striker within the first 20 minutes of a game if you just absolutely munch them time after time. But if your timing's a little bit off, you give away fouls, you pick up cards, and that's what happened here. The winning goal, again, as it was last time out, from Jobe Bellingham, who I actually haven't got any new words to say about Jobe Bellingham, other than he just continues.
Great finish as well.
Astound and delight.
Yeah, there's so much of that team that I really, really love and enjoy. And the questions, of course, with Regis Labrise coming in and what he would bring to the Championship, and the other side of that coin with Scott and his ability. There's a great, it's on YouTube somewhere, because I remember covering the game, which was Bournemouth against Forest a couple of seasons ago, where Forest were hot on the heels of Bournemouth. The narrative was all about Forest overtaking Bournemouth. I remember. And Scott's take, and it was, well, lads, we win, we're up. That's what we do. Yeah. And there's a great half-time clip of his speech about how he breaks down with passion, with clarity, what he's doing, what the team's doing, where they're going to go and show Forest or beat Forest. And
the Streets music playing in the background.
I think there is a version of that, possibly, with that. But and the most amazing thing that he manages to do, which is drop a half-time team talk. I don't think there's a single expletive in it at all. Maybe it shows the level of coach and intellect that we're talking about, but a lot of the clubs that I play for was just me getting screamed at half-time for being effing this and effing that, and can you stop effing this? I'm trying my best, Gaffer. I'm not trying to be terrible, but what he's got there with Burnley and what Regis has got with Sunderland. I'm very intrigued to see whether kind of those two, Burnley in particular, maybe being able to chase down that top 2. But I want to come away from that particular side of it, because at the other end, where we've seen changes. We've seen another big name come back into the Championship in Frank Lampard, who we did the show on Saturday. We had the ability to chat to him before, which was great. And you know what he's like. He's been very cool and calm and collected. Even didn't flinch when at the end I said, "Frank you," instead of saying, "Thank you, Frank." At which point he kind of laughed and I thought, let's get off. Sorry, mate. And he was good as gold. But all the build up to that was them being Coventry City, being quietly impressive under Frank so far. It was Pompey looking at them going, they've got beaten heavily on the Friday night. We had Colby Bishop in the next day, and bless it, he was great company, and he was down in London. And then casually asking him what was happening over the next couple of days, and it was Pompey's Christmas do, which was somewhere in London. And he went, but please don't mention it. So I'm a bit mischievous. I thought, could I get away with mentioning that when I say bye to him on air? Because I know what Pompey fans are like, and I think they'd lynch him. So I thought, because he's so nice, I'll leave him to it. But as that week proved, I'm not saying it's about a social that got them out of that little reaction, that sticky result against Derby. But my word, I mean, it helps when you've got Callum Lang in that form. But let's not talk about Coventry City having an off day first. Let's talk about Pompey being absolutely stunning at home at Fratton against the Sky Blues.
In Lang, they have one of the kind of, I guess, surprise stars of the Championship so far this season, because although he juices his goal numbers with 4 here, he's had plenty of other performances like this. And if you were to build a player of Championship players and you're just picking the players with the best work rate in every position, he would absolutely be in it. And it's it's to his credit. It's a great strength of his. We've seen him a couple of times this season winning the ball back high up the pitch and setting up goals or scoring goals. We've seen him winning penalties by just wanting to get there first and doing so, sneaking in the blind side of defenders. And here he just finished chances. He was helped by some really soft defending and some poor goalkeeping from Coventry. I haven't seen anyone make the frank-incensed gag that I was planning on about Coventry's display from 1-0 up. This could have been very different. They're 1-0 up early and Bassett goes through and has a one-on-one saved. But again, a bit like Portsmouth's response to going 3-0 down to Derby last week, the most concerning thing for me, for Cov, was why do you stop playing completely just because you've had a little bit of...
That's what Frank said. Not happy with the reaction at all, which he's absolutely right to say.
Yeah. So there you go. I'm pleased because I tried to make the point of not getting too worried about Pompey just because of that. I think I called it an aberration last week against Derby, and they've proven that. I think this is not necessarily beating Coventry 4-1 is what I expect from them every week, but this level of performance, particularly at home, the level of competitiveness, it gives you a chance of winning these games like this.
And they were superb, and I've got a lot of time for John. I think John Mussini is somebody that you would have spoken to and quite obviously seen his managerial career so far, even though given his age, you've still got to say it's in its infancy, and it just takes things as they come. He understands what the Championship and what Pompey are in the Championship. We expect, because again, historically, given the age of myself, Portsmouth were a team that was punching above its weight in the Premier League to great success, as we know. And he understands that any manager who's in a particular not necessarily sticky run of form, but given where they found themselves at the bottom end of the table, there's always going to be questions asked because Pompey are in a hurry to get back to, in quote unquote, where they feel they belong. But I think he's a very, very impressive manager for someone that, as I said, is only a few years into it.
Yeah, I would say they are now, in my eyes, them and Oxford coming up from League One, Derby as well. You always compare those teams. You want to see how they go at the level up. But in the way that the two clubs have approached this season so far, they are now diametrically opposed in my eyes, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And by that I mean Oxford have pulled the trigger on Des Buckingham, so early that no one saw it coming, right? And the first sign of what is a fairly extended poor run of form, don't get me wrong, but pretty much the first sign of real difficulty, they've decided they need to make a change because they're desperate to stay in the league, and in their eyes, they can only stay in the league if they make a change. And Portsmouth went completely the other way. Horrendous start to the season in terms of a points return, gave John Mousinho a new contract. We know that you're a good thing. You wouldn't have got us promoted last year if you weren't excellent. And the fact that you're now at the level above, and we're struggling a little bit, but that's just how football works because we're now playing against much better teams with much better players. We want to support you, and we want you to keep, proving your quality over a long period of time. It'll be really interesting to see kind of the immediate future of those two clubs based on that kind of decision making.
I was going to say a quick sidestep with regards to Des moving on from Oxford. Gary Rowett was at the Leeds game, wasn't he? I don't know whether he was pitch side. Was he taking it in from
no, he wasn't taking this one.
He was hiding behind his hands in the director's box, going, "Oh wow!" And I'll let you into a little. No, it's not a secret. He was due to be with us for a Boxing Day triple header, Gary Rowett. But obviously stars in our advert, our promo, gets himself a job. Guys, you're welcome, mate. All I can say is you're welcome. You're back at it.
Because I texted him saying, "There's a spot on the sofa on Boxing Day, is there?"
Absolutely. Get yourself in.
Cool.
Come in your Gary Rowett outfit, sure. Which is very kind of... It's what we all wear now. Middle-aged knitwear. We're all in that same spot. Very white trainers as well.
Yeah. Quarter zip, white trainers.
Slightly too tight trousers. So what do you think about that? He is a man and a manager that I've always had a lot of time for. He's always been very gracious with us. Good company, very good company, good fella, and a very workable manager at this level. And I don't mean that's not damning him with faint praise, because managing in the Championship is horrendously difficult.
Yeah.
If only we had an Oxford fan that could give us some real insight with this. But if you're going to have babies willy-nilly, then you're going to be away from this. But your take on Gaz going in there and potentially what comes next?
Good appointment, a solid appointment. I think it makes sense. It doesn't guarantee them anything, because no manager, apart from Neil Warnock, of course, guarantees anything. But, there are, I think, legitimate questions about whether the current squad is a good fit for what we would perceive to be Gary Rowett sort of go-to style of play, which is to be, unbreakable first and foremost. I remember talking to Jed Wallace about Rowett's management, and he was like, "We are so well drilled, it is obscene. Like his obsession with good shape is just remarkable." And it's the sort of thing that you get kind of. It can almost sound like you're criticising them for, this is the sort of stuff that is adjacent with like boring football, but I don't see why
fundamentals are called, Ali. I think.
Exactly. I don't see why wanting your team to have like the tightest imaginable shape is a strange thing. But I think there are fair questions about whether Oxford have the personnel for that. We will see. That they're at the top end of the pitch as well. It's about like, okay, if we're not able to dominate the ball and create chances by being just a talented side for the level as they were at times in League One, what are the avenues of us scoring goals? That will probably be, in my eyes, his biggest challenge. I think George is kind of pretty happy with it as well. So
I think broadly, I'd like to think that would be the case, because I understand the change in nature and the perception of what British managers are, because I speak to a lot of them. And what I hear cynically sometimes is it's about the strength of a candidate's interview rather than a CV. I'm not saying like a dinosaur. Oh, he's been X, Y, and Z. Yeah, lots of clubs doesn't mean that you're a very good manager. Lots of clubs mean you've had a lot of clubs. It doesn't mean that type of CV doesn't instantly transfer into what they need right now. But having spent time with Gary, covered his teams, listen to what he talks about and how he delivers it, he seems like a manager that I would have loved to have played for, and I think someone that will be a great addition to Oxford. And I mean, it's very pertinent that we are talking about managers, because someone who, in your wonderful intro, the role of the role, your role of rolling his roles, was a joy to listen to. But and forgive me, Wednesday fans, if you listen to this, and I'm not trying to sound remiss, but when did they creep up to where they've got to in the division?
Mate, I know. I thought that as well.
Wednesday really good, especially at home, and obviously beating a side in Stoke who perennially were trying to work out, with the greatest respect, what's going on. Different managers, sets of players, directors of football. The ownership stays the same. Treading water.
Yeah, it feels like it. The current. Not quite mutiny amongst the fan base, but it's getting to that point again, because it was a punchy call from Jonathan Walters to make the managerial change. He was pretty open about owning that, and as he saw it, the change was going to help the team get better, and it hasn't led to an improvement in results. Their underlying numbers are bottom three since Chicho Polak took charge. So there's at this juncture, it hasn't made things better. They haven't won in 8 games, 4 defeats in 5. They have had, in fairness, some remarkable misfortune when it comes to refereeing decisions. There was one here as well, the Barry Bannon handball that wasn't given as a penalty when, he just simply controlled the ball with his hand and should have been a penalty. I will say, to be fair to the ref, I thought the penalty that he did give Stoke was a really good. It was a good spot. It was a sort of the pull of the arm or the hand by Max Lowe to the striker Gallagher is the sort of thing that does get missed quite a lot in a kind of flurry of bodies. So fair play to the ref. I thought that was a good call. Unfortunately, Cannon had his penalty brilliantly saved by Beadle. Going back to Rowell, I kind of think there's a couple of things that you can really focus in on the manager, an impressive bit of management for. And one of them is how a team responds to going down to 10 men.
Yeah.
Deshaun Bernard's 2 yellows is like watching a car crash, the second one, because he's already had a huge let-off where he miscontrols a ball, striker nips in front of him, he brings him down when it could have been a red card. And if that's you, Deshaun Bernard, don't do it again, mate, like minutes later. Another miscontrol, exactly the same scenario, lunges in, brings him down, second yellow. And Wednesday's centre-backs do all seem quite prone to individual mistakes, which hasn't helped them this season. But
that's such a good, sorry to put it, that's such a good point, because again, looking at it hopefully from a objective professional point of view, there is an element of looking at the way that Wednesday do defend at times and think, I can feel something's about to happen here. Not in a positive way. Yeah. You just think there's a rick coming, and as you say, and it's one of those where time and time again I've watched Wednesday's games, and as I said, that's probably why there's a little bit of surprise where you suddenly see them up very much in the top half of the table, eyes on the top 6, definitely. Where is there an element where Danny's got to really? Is it the players? Are they at this level because there is a natural rick in them, or is it a case where the coach can kind of eliminate those, or because it feels to me more individual decision making, which not is costing them, but in that game against Stoke could have cost them, couldn't it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and quickly on their league position, that they are now 4 points above what I might call the seeded batch, which again, that has crept up on me as well, and it's really, really impressive. And then you have a big scare in the week where you think Rowell's going to get hired by Southampton, and you do just worry about what happens to Wednesday and the team if that does happen, but it didn't, so it's fine for now. With the defensive mistakes, one of my big things, right, is that if you are going to ask your defenders to play an unusually high line, if you're going to ask your forwards to press from the front, and therefore instead of being compact, which is often one buzzword, you are basically the opposite of that, then they are going to be in positions more regularly than other centre-backs who play in a more cosy, more comfortable style, closer to their own goal and defending, shorter spaces. They're going to be in more situations where mistakes could happen, and they look really bad because you don't have cover. I think the way Rowell wants to play is a bit like that. He wants them to be quite aggressive. So I do feel for the centre-backs a little bit on that front. However, the extent to which they keep making those mistakes in those positions means that I think he loses a bit of confidence in them, and we've already seen this season, they started off poorly defensively. He went more conservative for a period just to start building some results and some points, and then he got a little bit brave again. Okay, now we've got that platform. Can we be a bit more expansive? And I think the jury's kind of still out. But the fact that they're able to keep accruing this level of points while he's kind of tinkering and working things out and trying to work out what's appropriate for the players that he has, I think is a massive, tick in the box for Danny Rowell, and another reason why we think he's such a talented manager. Just quickly back to Stoke. They've got Leeds next, then they've got Sunderland, then they've got Burnley, 3 of the top 4 in the space of a week. So if Stoke are going to have anything other than a tough Christmas, it's going to mean that they beat the top sides, and what a week ahead for them, basically.
Yeah, it's Stoke looking for the type of form and results that they've not shown so far, isn't it? That's the irony with that. We'll keep a very keen eye on that particular situation. West Brom were in action on Sunday. They beat Bristol City, and they had that very long unbeaten run, which, whether you were glass half full or half empty, was amazing, or was just full of draws. That was then brought to an end with that defeat against Watford, but back to it against Bristol City. And again, we mentioned Danny Rowell being mentioned in dispatches with the Southampton job. Carlos Corberán briefly was chucked into that mix, which again shows maybe either accurately or inaccurately, the perception of him outside of what Baggies fans are seeing every single week is that there's a very good coach there that's very, very talented in putting a team together and able to try and create something that's very well set up, hard to beat, and formidable going forward. Currently on the same points as Borough, but they're in their 7th spot now. Recent doubters silenced for you, Ali, or still questions of what West Brom are? Because done in comparison to them getting into the playoffs last season, a lot of debate about the strength of the top of the division this season. Would operating hovering around 7th place be good enough for Baggies fans at the moment?
Possibly just below par, I would say. I would expect them to be a top 6 team, and they're level on points with the exact same record as Borough. So that they are basically joint 6th in my eyes. So I'm not going to be judging the season right now. It's been a bit confusing, as you say, with the long unbeaten run. You know, you get to the point where they lose to Watford and you can say, oh, they've only won 2 games in their last, whatever it was, 13 or 14. Then they win on the weekend and you can say, well, they've only lost 1 game in their last, 16? So there's so many different ways of slicing it up. I mean, I do think that for them just to score goals at home was important. They only had 8 in 10 home games before this one. I do question Corberan's coaching when it comes to the top end of the pitch, because they rarely look fluent. This comes with the caveat that I think he's one of the best out of possession coaches I've ever seen at the level, and that is incredibly important and gives them an incredibly strong foundation, which is why they don't lose those games when they don't score. But there is a reliance on it, in this game. The way they win it is the first goal comes with Tom Fellows picking the ball up on the right wing, fairly stagnant in the middle of the box, to be honest, and it's the sort of attack we see quite a lot from West Brom, where they get to that point and you wonder if they've really got the answers. Thankfully, they've got Tom Fellows, who so consistently can dig out good crosses, and the quality of his delivery is so good. Mikey Johnson ghosting in for a header, showing that good bit of movement that they've been lacking in recent weeks, and then clearly getting confidence from that and scoring much more of a Mikey Johnson-esque goal, cutting in from the left and smashing it into the top corner. So really important win for them. Fellows goes to 8 assists, which is joint top of the assist charts with Finn Azaz, but 2 of Azaz's are set-piece assists. So from open play, Fellows has been the kind of premier creator in the Championship this season, and it's crucial for West Brom, and he's had a bit of a dip in terms of his output. I think it is pretty much as simple at the moment as if Fellows can put in more performances like that, they'll win more games 1-0 and 2-0, and if he can't, they'll keep drawing a lot of games 0-0 and 1-1. Honestly, that's how I see it at the moment.
Let's take a look at some 2-1s. Hull City, first win in 14 for them. More importantly, first win for Ruben Sellers. I was chatting to a very good Hull City source of mine, Baz Cooper, who was talking about a slight different vibe around the place. Tim Volter, for good, bad or indifference, he had a certain way of running Hull City. It didn't obviously come to any fruition, hence the fact that he's moved on. Yeah. But in Ruben Sellers, he's got very recent experience in galvanising a fan base and a team and putting them together and everyone coming together, as he did so well at Reading. Swansea, Luke not too happy with the performance, not necessarily too impressed either with Hull City, but Hull City don't care when you've got a Mason Burstow winner, which stands out as one of the better goals of the weekend. Corner turned too early. What's your thoughts?
No, definitely too early,
yeah.
And partly because I picked Swansea to win on the betting show and they've lost. So I want to, I don't want to flip 180. And that was based on watching Hull's first 2 games under Sellers and being really unimpressed, particularly with their appetite for defending. So I felt Swansea could make the most of that. Obviously, they'd had a whole week on the training pitch with Sellers, presumably his first full week, and maybe that led to an improved performance level and his kind of developing relationship with the players and the fans. I do think on balance this game probably should have been a 1-1 draw. I think that probably would have reflected the game as I saw it. João Pedro put Hull ahead, got a bit of luck with a deflection that took it into the near post. Equaliser, exceptional cross from Timon onto the head of Darling, who scored for Swans. And then I thought it was probably going to peter into a draw. And then Lawrence Vigouroux, who is a magnificent ball player as a goalkeeper at this level, and has been one of the better shot stoppers in the league this season, has won Swansea many points in tight games this season. But unfortunately, maybe because of the conditions and the wind, he tried his sort of classic wedged ball out to the fullback, didn't catch it properly, straight to Burstow, who had a lot to do and scored an absolutely brilliant winning goal. But, you know, if that ball goes a bit longer, or if he just, you know, completes the pass, I think this game probably peaks out for a 1-1 draw. So hopefully Hull can kind of use that, take that into the festive period, having got the monkey off their back and their first win in 13, and straight out the bottom three as well, which just shows how tight it is down there. And, you know, QPR is such a great reflection of that, having been bottom of the league less than a month ago, and they're now 14th, having won 4 and drawn 3 of their last 7, beating Preston from behind on Saturday, only behind really because Steve Cook picked up what looked like a really, really horrible injury in a passage of play that led to Osmajic and scoring for Preston.
What's your take on that? Because obviously as Osmajic, and there's a broader debate about Milutin Osmajic and sportsmanship, but
he's just a very hungry striker.
And he's that's, you're right. But the reaction, obviously there was a celebration from Preston players. There was a couple of QPR players wandering over to say, should you have kicked the ball out there? I looked at it and it's a tough one because it wasn't quite in the Di Canio mould of the ball's coming over, he's about to hit a volley, he catches it, he runs off, gets Sportsman of the Year award. It wasn't quite that. The cynic in me, I mean, and please tell me if this just makes me out to be a horrible ex-footballer. If it's an attacker where he's munched him, he's quite clearly in agony and he's on the ground, I think there's more of a debate.
This is one of those. This happens occasionally when we've worked together, where I realise what an absurd situation we've both got ourselves into. Where you, the former professional footballer with over a decade's worth of professional games under your belt, is asking me, who has never played any sort of level of football outside of my six-a-side team on Tuesday nights, what I think about an incident that clearly is about basically professionalism and kind of like a contract between players and unwritten rules of sportsmanship. My take, for whatever it's worth, is there's no criticism for Osmajic for running through and scoring. It would be an amazing thing, and he would get a lot of praise for his sportsmanship had he stopped, and that could have been a really nice thing, and it might have been good for his, good PR for him after Bitegate. But would never expect a player to stop in that exact scenario, because defenders, it sounds really heartless to say, given that it could be a horrible injury, but defenders do trip over. They do fall over. Deshaun Bernard falls over on the ball, and the Stoke player is running clear with it and gets brought. That it's in the speed of the moment. You're not going to have the clarity of thought to be like, oh, that looks like a bad one, I should stop to check he's all right. I really don't think you can expect that from a player. The rules have been made somewhat clearer, I think, about the game has to be stopped if it's a head injury, but not for any other type of injury. So that makes it pretty academic for me that you wouldn't expect him to stop. And I think I wondered whether maybe I'm like drilling down too deep here. I wondered whether some of QPR's disappointment or anger was about the extent of the celebration. Almost is like you can't. I don't think you can in good faith be like really angry that he's run through and scored a goal. I genuinely don't think you can be legitimately like fuming with that. But maybe, I don't know what the celebration was, but if it's a little bit too much and it's not showing any due kind of respect maybe for an injured player, maybe that was it. I don't know, but no issues there. They got over it, QPR, and I think that's quite impressive. Cook is so important for them, both purely defensively, defending their box, but also as a kind of the elder statesman of the team. So for them to come back and win, I think is really impressive. Ryan Coley again scoring an equaliser for them, and then Jimmy Dunn, who just he's becoming a bit of a QPR icon, I think, for the fact that he scores memorable goals, winning goals like this. His celebration was perfect, exactly what any non-professional would do if they scored a last-minute winner in front of home fans. Shirt off, booting the ball that was on the cone by the pitch, going absolutely crazy. So perfect. And, as we discussed the other day, he's had a really tough time with his dad passing away recently. I think we're just, we're very pro Jimmy Dunn on this pod. So him scoring late winners is good news.
I didn't see, obviously, because of given what a unique ground Loftus Road is, with the ball being on the cone, it could quite easily clear the stand. So did we know where the ball? I mean, is someone taking it full in the face, like halfway, or has he gone over the top?
Yeah, I don't know.
I love seeing that. But as you say, with Jimmy Dunn as well, so right to reference that as well, because it's the human side of what football sometimes forgets, and there is an element where it can be escapism, it can be something that takes you away from what is real life. It can also be very tough when you can't compartmentalise, and I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't be able to compartmentalise, but everyone's built differently. But as you say, the reaction was just sheer unbridled emotion, which I think sometimes can get forgotten because you don't know what's being vented there, you don't know what's being expressed, and you don't know what's being felt. But in that moment, everyone's together, everyone's on his side, and it's a wonderful thing to see. It's speaking about togetherness and potentially moving in the right direction. Luton leaving it very late, obviously, to get the weekend kicked off in the Championship. We're going to come on to Millwall in just a second and the post-Neil Harris era. I've not managed to touch base with you with regards to Luton this season. That mixed bag of what we're seeing from results, from performances, from players that we know have done it at this level and kind of flirted with doing it in the Premier League, it's as much mental and emotional of a boost, I think, that win, as it is from a quality point of view, because my word, did they leave it very late.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm really out at the moment on this Luton team, and it sounds ridiculous, no skin in the game, pure neutral watching this game, and you love a bit of Championship action on a Friday night with some absurd late drama. Like it's you've got Weaver on comms, and you know he's going to nail it, and he does. And it's at Kenilworth Road, and it's just, everything about it was perfect. Except I was really angry. I was really angry on Derby's behalf. My head would have been on Mars if I was a Derby fan or anyone connected to the club. They deserved to win the game. They were much more impressive. Both of the goals were deflected, and Panzu's finding the corner, sweet. He caught it sweetly on the volley, but a big deflection off Tom Holmes' significant rump, and then Morris's goal, obviously getting a deflection into the top corner as well. It papers over huge chasms in the Luton, in the way that they're performing, not just on the night, but that was just a reflection of basically their performance level pretty consistently this season, outside of maybe a 2-week period where we felt, George said, they're back. And they weren't back.
Is that what he said?
They weren't back at all. They're so unimpressive. They're so messy as a team. And I was willing to start the season and the slow start to, give them a fairly long grace period and believe that a manager who I know can build quality teams and players, as you say, we've seen do it before, and a club that have been one of the most impressive in English football overall as in the last decade. Very, very willing to give them time and not just go big on how bad they are. But now I'm kind of I'm done with that. I'm incredibly unimpressed. I think their performance level is really poor. There's not a lot to like at the moment. Right now, I've kind of given up hope that their performance level, aside from results, just how they play, is going to be back towards what they were 2 years ago, back to top 6 levels, top half levels. So kind of, well done. Good win. Good win.
Absolutely. Absolutely done with them. My word. Right, after that scathing takedown of what Luton Town stand for across the board. Obviously, Millwall parted company with Neil Harris, so therefore they won, didn't they, against a Blackburn team that had been really kind of cruising through, and 1-0 to the Blackburn was seemingly the shout coming out of Ewood Park whenever you were there. Yeah. Alex Neil as well being mooted, so they've gone from 1-0 potentially to another. Alex being mooted with the job at Millwall. Nothing confirmed as yet. He's one of many names, of course. But Neil Harris moving on. A win for them at home against Blackburn. The Championship doing Championship-type stuff. But should we have been overly surprised about this, Ali? Should we have seen it coming?
No, I don't think we'd ever be surprised about Millwall winning a Championship game 1-0. It's a huge part of their identity and their quality and why they've become such an established team at this level. I think they edged the game. There's no doubt about that. They had the better chances. There was one moment where Kozia Dewberry, the Blackburn player, streaked clear on the break, was 1-on-1, and Femi Aziz, of all people, the Millwall winger, not known for his defensive zeal, makes the most incredible recovery run and tackle. Big moment at 0-0. The kind of the slightly less obvious moment that had a huge impact on the game was Eustace made his subs really early, and by the time Lewis Travis came off injured, he couldn't make another sub, so they were down to 10 for quite a long period. And it's a numbers game when you're in injury time, you're putting balls into the box.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a numbers game, right? When you're so strong aerially as Millwall are, maybe that contributed to Ivanovic getting on the end of a good ball in and scoring a header. 95 minutes and 53 seconds on the clock. Great scenes at the Den. He's only got 2 goals so far, but they were an 85th minute equaliser against Derby and the injury time winner. So big goals being scored by this young striker who, himself, I think kind of represents a bit of a shift in approach for the whole club, certainly in terms of squad building. So well done to Livermore, the caretaker, getting a win, and I think deservedly so by the end of it.
If it is Alex Neil in a Millwall, what's your initial gut reaction to that?
Yeah, I'm an Alex Neil fan. I think he's good.
Yeah.
I just think he's a good manager. One of the things with Rowett and with Neil is that you can be fairly confident that just in terms of temperament and knowing what they're getting themselves in for, being a championship manager in the kind of whirlwind of this league, you can be pretty confident on a base level that they're going to be able to handle it. So that's good. I think Neil could help himself sometimes in just the way that he speaks to the fans, could try and give them a little bit more to kind of warm to him. And I do think for Millwall fans that is important for their relationship with a manager. So I would hope that he's had some good comms advice and he comes in and says the right things early on to get them on side, because on a technical level, how I perceive him as a coach, again, particularly out of possession first and foremost, and then he's had teams who have been really good in attack in different ways as well. So I would back him to be a very solid appointment for Millwall at this time.
Do you know what doesn't get Millwall fans on side? Is warming up in front of them with shoulder length hair, wearing leggings, playing for Leeds United. That really, if you want to incite a mini riot, then feel free to do that.
Amazing.
I don't know who it was anyway. Anyway, moving on. You've got Michael Carrick and Wayne Rooney, 2 of the beating hearts of one of the great Sir Alex Ferguson Man United teams. So obviously it was going to be Plymouth 3, Borough 3, wasn't it? No one's sitting in, no one's kind of just trying to get a 1-0 or play for a very boring goalless draw. They went at it hammer and tongue, and what a wonderful thing to see.
Great game. I think just to maybe tweak your analogy there, I think Carrick was the heartbeat. I think Rooney was the lungs. Just the sort of the angry lungs of that
screaming, beating lungs of that particular place,
Argyle have played really well against Sheffield United away and against Borough at home. They have only 1 point to show from it. But it's got to be said, because we've been highly critical of their performance level this season. They had played brilliantly even before they went 1-0 up here. The extended highlights has like 3 or 4 really nice moves, good chances not taken. Then they go ahead. They end up going ahead 3 times in this game. The game plan looked really good. They clearly targeted Borough's left side. The left back Borges had a tough time. Bundu, brilliant down the right. But they have got a soft centre, and Borough the sort of team that can really make the most of that. So they came back 3 times and equalised. It's too early to know for sure, but it hasn't escaped my attention that Mike Phelan was appointed as Rooney's assistant, and he's been on the bench for 2 games, and they've looked so much better and more coherent overall, with good game plans in both games so far. They've been really good at 0-0 against 2 of the best teams in the league. So that gives me hope for Argyle, and I'll be watching their games really closely over the next, what we've got 3 games in the next week or so. I think it's going to be fascinating. Something a bit different for FOTMOB Corner this week. It's going to be 3 segments, 1 for each league, and very simply using FOTMOB's player rating algorithm and their stats and data to flag up their top 5 players of each league in the EFL so far. FOTMOB, as you guys know by now, is the best football scores app, but it's also got a wealth of free data and stats for players, teams and leagues, Championship, League 1, League 2, and so many other leagues across the world. So it's always nice to see who they've pegged as the sort of highest performing, most consistently good players in each league in the Championship, and filtering out anyone that's played less than 2/3 of available minutes, because as you guys know, I like availability as the best ability, because these are the guys that have shown a consistently high level, not just for a month or 2 here and there before picking up a little muscle injury and missing a month or so. Top of the tree is Michael Cooper in goal for Sheffield United. Still hasn't conceded a goal at Bramall Lane. What a signing. And it just made me think, I love foreign recruitment, and I get excited when Championship clubs, as they increasingly do, pick up players from League 2 or the Hungarian League or the Serbian League. But You do wonder if like there's too much choice now with all the data and video scouting available and the ESC slots that they can use to get these players in. And you wonder if it sometimes leads to Championship clubs just overthinking it a little bit. And the goalkeeper position is an interesting one to look at, where a lot of players have been signed. Someone like Zetterstrom, great signing for Derby, but a lot of the other keepers that have come from overseas have struggled. And you've just got Michael Cooper signing for Sheffield United, having been consistently excellent for Argyle, and you just think, yeah, that was an obvious one. And now here we are talking about him as FOTMOB's number 1 rated player in the Championship this season. An excellent signing. Number 2 is also a Sheffield United summer signing. It's Harrison Burrows. And I like this one because League One player of the season last year, but there's always red flags with players. You can always point at weaknesses, and if you're trying to be smart and talk about a signing, you can always flag them up, can't you? And the obvious one with Burrows was, will he be able to cut it defensively as a left back in the Championship against these skillful, quick, wide forwards? Well, the answer is yes. It's seemingly so. Wilder's built a team where Burrows can make the most of his ability going forward, and he's contributed to a lot of goals this season, while also being part of the best defence in the Championship this season. So fair play. Conrad Egan Riley, number 3 on the list, one of the breakout stars of the season so far in the Championship, breaking into the Burnley first team and just looking at home, strong and composed, just quality all over at the back for Burnley. Victor Johansson, another keeper in at number 4, no surprise, because he has saved so many, he's made so many incredible saves. He has helped Stoke do actually better than their defensive performance suggests that they might do. Another excellent summer signing. And we finish off with Ao Tanaka of Leeds in 5th spot. I spoke to Dan Moylan of the Square Ball the other day, who just said, I can't believe we signed him for $2.5 million. Unbelievable player. And it's hard to disagree. Tanaka, just the complete Championship midfielder, a lot like David Prutton in his Leeds spell, just absolutely excellent, and rounds off the Championship top 5 players per FOTMOB this season. 4 or 5 of them summer signings, which is good to see. Highly commended just outside our top 5, Alex Mowat of West Brom, Job Bellingham of Sunderland, and Gus Harmer of Sheffield United. We'll do the same for League 1 and League 2 later in the show, but make sure you download FOTMOB using the link in the show notes. Advanced stats for every EFL player, so get scouting for your club ahead of January, and we'll do League 1 and League 2 in just a bit.
It was a weekend of massive away wins in League 1. Northampton 0, Charlton 5, Cambridge 0, Huddersfield 4, Barnsley 0, Leyton Orient 4. Let's start at the top of that. Charlton, I mean, there's no other term for it, pumping Northampton 5-0, Ali.
Yeah, yes, David. Yes. Charlton, I mean, I want to say this is kind of out of nowhere. From a Charlton-centric perspective, it very much was. They scored 3-0 in the first, 3 goals in the first half, which is as many as they'd scored in first halves total in the season up to that point. And they kept going in the second with 2 more. And 2 good finishes from Doherty, the captain in midfield, a nice assist and a goal from one of my favourite young players, Miles Leaburn, who's still playing himself back into rhythm after a long-term injury. But if you watch the assist, you see a bit of speed to get to latch onto the ball in the channel, face up a defender, and then he sees the run from Tyrese Campbell. He threads a brilliant through ball, scores with his weaker foot, his left foot as well. So lots of good signs for Leaburn there. And then Danny Hilton kind of icing the cake, the most disgusting icing on the cake for Northampton Town, given that he spent the last 2 seasons with them and did not score a single goal and was missing in action for most of it. So it was hard to see this one coming from a Charlton-centric point of view. Northampton Town fans would be like, yeah, we knew this was coming. They feel their team is just not registering at all at the moment. Flapping in the wind would be an expression that springs to mind after John Brady. His replacement hasn't been appointed yet, unless it's happened while we've been recording. The current odds suggest that Kevin Nolan might be in the frame, which would be interesting to have him back managing in the EFL. But as it stands, Northampton just have to sort themselves out. They gave Charlton a very easy day here. You could probably say, I think Cambridge actually put up a better fight against Huddersfield. But Huddersfield's general performance level very high at the moment. Since they lost to Birmingham on the 1st of October, they've played 11, won 8, drawn 3, scoring 2 goals a game, conceding less than 1. So in really, really good nick at the moment, gunning for automatics for sure. A couple of players to flag up from this performance. Callum Marshall on loan from West Ham. Really, really good performances over the last few weeks. He's interesting because he joins having been, I think, top scorer in PL2 last season at the point where he went on loan to West Brom, where he barely played. So you're expecting this guy to be a real young fox in the box, but I think at Huddersfield he's showing himself to be a bit more of an all-rounder. He's he can drop deep, he can impact the game dropping deep, and swung in a great cross for a goal for an assist here. But he's also finishing chances well. Really interesting young player that is finally having a decent run of games and kind of proving himself at senior level. I want to point out the fact that Josh Koroma, having started the season playing up top for Huddersfield, is now playing left wing back, which is a bit of fun. And
quite the evolution.
Yeah, I think it signifies Michael Duff just taking the handbrake off a little bit. He's the sort of manager likes to play 3 centre backs and wing backs. Someone like Koroma is not an obvious fit because defensively you probably don't want to rely on him. But I think if you are one of the bigger hitters in the league and you're gunning for top 2, this is the sort of thing you probably do need to do if you want to be. You're going to have a solid base with that back 3 for sure, and they do. But you do need X factor going forward. I think popping Koroma here, if you can be confident that Spencer playing left centre back can cover ground when he's caught upfield, as he will be, you're going to get a lot from him in attack, and I think it's helped them just loosen up a little bit going forward. Koroma playing well, but Stephen Chicken, who covers Huddersfield for the We Are Terriers Substack, he wants to point out David Kasumu in midfield playing brilliantly. He wrote, I thought this was really nice, he said, Cambridge fans were consistently left groaning as their own players' wasteful passing moves kept breaking down thanks to interceptions. You almost wanted to tell them, don't worry, that's just David Kasumu. He's very good at that.
Yeah, keep your groaning to yourselves when you've got a player in that type of form. Speaking of form, you had 8th against 18th, which was Barnsley taking on Leyton Orient. One team won 4-0, potentially not the one that you would have predicted ahead of that, but they've just won 2 of 11 home games, Barnsley. So potentially, yes, there's a huge gap between these two, but is this one that you saw coming?
Ish. I've been really bullish on Orient. What was such a poor first quarter of the season?
Yeah,
they were in 20th. I just never for a minute felt they were a bottom 6 team, in their bones. So they've sorted that out. They're flying up the table. They've kept 7 clean sheets in 9. In December, it's 3 wins and a draw with no goals conceded. All of a sudden, the playoffs are only 6 points away, and there is at least one playoff spot seemingly very much available to whoever puts together a strong second half of the season. So impressive stuff. I mean, it was really windy over the weekend, and I think you could see that with quite a few of the goals that were scored. And I think this is the shittest analysis ever, but you'll know better than me. Quite hard defending corners when it's really windy.
As Sunday League as that sounds, it genuinely is.
Yeah, because I mean, some of these corners that were taken that ended up in goals, the starting trajectory of the ball practically back towards like the halfway line. So as a defender, you're instantly stepping out to go, because you think we're just going to clear that away. We're on the break. All of a sudden, it's like on the goal line or in the 6-yard box because it's swazzed its way in due to the wind. I say all that to say, Barnsley were a shambles defending corners, 2-0 down early on from 2 corners. Donnelly and Beckel scoring, and then Kelman and Perkins making it even better for the travelling Orient fans. So yeah, for Barnsley fans, pretty fed up because neutrals might look at them just outside the playoffs and think, yeah, okay, broadly what you might have expected, but 2 wins in 17 home games, including the last 6 of last season and the 11 this season, and this possibly the worst of the lot. So it's not like, okay, the wins are coming. It's like, no, it's getting worse. It's not great.
Stockport very much in the playoff places, playing on Friday night, beating Peterborough. All happy days, but there is a caveat, isn't there? Is it going to be the same in January because something's happened, Ali?
Yes, because the best player in the league is being recalled. Louis Barry has been recalled by Aston Villa. That's already been announced. He will play against Birmingham on New Year's Day before Villa take him back, which is a nice wrinkle to this. He's the best player in the league, in my eyes, this season. The most valuable attacking player for sure. The most goal contributions. He got 2 assists in this win. 17 goal contributions total this season. But now it'll be the Championship clubs on the phone to Villa for the next week or two. Looks like Borough might be in pole position for that, which will make their attack even more mouth-watering. Yeah. And it's obviously going to be tough for Stockport because it's a team sport where individual players are important, but it's the team is the most important on every level. And yet, occasionally you have a player that can just generate goals on their own, and they don't grow on trees, and that's been Louis Barry this season. So, a bit of an issue for Stockport. I think the 2-1 win was absolutely the right scoreline, but it's tough with loanees. You get the benefit of being able to attract the sort of talent that you probably can't buy and you probably don't develop through your academy, but at the same time you are at the mercy of them being recalled if they are performing too good for the level, which is very much the case for Barry. What I would say, because fans do often feel almost offended when a loanee gets taken away from them. It's not a nice feeling. It's like having your phone snatched out your hand on Victoria Street on your 21st birthday.
But you're over that now, which is fine.
Yeah, but what I would say is, what I think is worth pointing out is clubs often have like 4 loanees, and if they don't do well in the first half of the season, fans are very quick to be like, let's just bin him off, right? Let's send him back. Don't worry about him. Don't worry about hurting his feelings. Let's just get rid of him. We need that slot for a better loanee. So, you do get both sides of the coin. But never fall in love with a loanee and never trust a man with 2 first names. And Louis Barry ticks both boxes.
He has been magnificent, but I very much do agree with the 2 first names thing. Stay well away. Lincoln beat Reading, therefore Lincoln taking Reading's spot in the top 6.
Yeah, comfy here. Reading have got to be a little bit concerned about the level of performance here. I don't think the fans really hanging their hat on top 6 finish, but clearly Sellers had taken them into the top 6, so maybe you do start to re-rate and kind of re-evaluate. But Lincoln were much better here. Kadamatri scoring, nice take, as it always is. A player that I like a lot for his finishing ability. And Rico Hackett scoring. And I think Skubala made a little tweak here. Looks like this was 4-2-3-1. I mean, it is minuscule tweak in tactical terms, because Rowan's been the left centre-back with Hackett Fairchild, the left wing-back. And it looks to me like Rowan just played more of a regulation left-back role, with Hackett much further forward and with fewer defensive duties. And it seemed to work. I think they just wanted to basically get on the front foot against a wobbly Reading side, and it worked very well.
Gary Bowyer in at Burton, which is wonderful because I've always had a lot of time for Gary. Frustrating for him in his bow with Burton against an Exeter side that scored, I would say, the winner's got to be up there with goal of the weekend, if not goal of the weekend. I
wish there were 10 extra angles of this, because the way that it enters the goal needs analysing. It's just so good from Milenik Ali, cutting in from the right-hand side, swinging a left foot shot, which I think is his weaker foot. Just the power, the trajectory, perfectly in the top corner.
100% a shot. 100% a shot.
Oh, yeah.
Not a cross shot. 100% a shot.
Not a wind-assisted freak goal, for sure. Brilliant strike. I think Exeter needed this. Such poor form recently, and obviously, once you start tumbling down the table from what was a lofty starting position, you do worry a bit about those 4 relegation spots. But then you beat one of those teams away from home, you start feeling a little bit more comfy. I don't really know what to think about the Gary Bowyer appointment.
No.
He's one of those managers, I'm happy to admit, I don't have a major opinion on either way. So I'm intrigued to know that you've someone that you know well, and I wonder if you've got any extra context you can add to Bowyer and Burton.
From Gary's point of view, this is not to belie any kind of, or come away from any form of tactical nous or ability to set a team up. It's more demeanour based for me, I think, with Gary. We've seen him at several football league clubs, and he runs it all in the same way. Whether it's kind of high profile with all eyes on a Salford or a Blackburn Rovers, he's just a thoroughly nice fella, and that sounds a weird thing to flag up in football because it's full of absolutely horrible people. but I think. Given the job at hand, which is, second bottom, it's extremely tough. And Burton, historically, in the last kind of decade or so, has been a side that's thrilled and frustrated in equal measure because of how far ahead they've punched and above the weight that they've punched, but also kind of reverted to potentially being in and around where they are now. I think it's as much to do with the feel of what he's got at his disposal as it is about potentially the expectation level with the Burton. Because I'm not saying because it's Burton Albion, it shouldn't be about getting at least mid-table, knocking on the door of the playoffs, an outside glorious shot at the Championship. But it feels, first port call, obviously, you're taking over a team where they are. The second bottom, it's got to be safety and consolidation, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We had Mansfield beating Rotherham 1-0. Sweet on 2 levels for Mansfield. A, because they were 7 without a win before this, and then the extra sweetener because it was former manager Steve Evans in the dugout. No love lost between Steve Evans and Stags fans, and it was a terrible game. It was a scrappy goal. Deji Oshalaja sort of picking up some scraps to finish after a second phase of a set piece. Perfect way to beat Steve Evans if you're Mansfield. For Rotherham, it kind of just feels like They take a step forward and then they take a step back. They are so much easier to beat than we could have ever expected them to be. And that's a bit of a problem because I don't think this squad was built to be consolidating in the bottom half or mid-table before going again next year. It doesn't seem like the either the Rotherham or the Steve Evans blueprint. So continue to be kind of concerned in the short term about then. A couple of draws as well in League One. We had Wigan throwing away a 2-0 lead at home to Shrewsbury, which does not reflect well on them, I'm afraid. So well done to Shrews for fighting and coming back. Bloxham, notably a threat down the right for both goals, and a very rare Sam Tickle mistake in goal for Wigan. Wrexham conceded late against Bristol Rovers, a draw there. Promise Omakere with the equaliser for Rovers. Still waiting to see who their new manager will be. The current favourite is Inigo Calderon, which is quite exciting. With last week's name was Michael Wimmer, a German manager. I'm not sure what's happened there. The trail seems to have gone a little colder there. So would it be Calderon? We will find out. Wycombe 0, Bolton 0 was a match that happened on Friday night, as was Blackpool 0, Stevenage 0. And Sky Sports is showing Monday night's game between Crawley and Birmingham, which should be interesting. League One's top 5 FOTMOB rated players this season has Lee Evans at the top. Now, I think that you have to bear in mind with a rating system that someone has to sit down and decide what goes into a player rating on a match-to-match basis, and therefore the cumulative ones. And as a massive nerd who likes studying things like this, I always think I can work out what different algorithms prioritise. So who scored, for example, they love a meaty centre-back who does loads of heading and kicking, because they can, for a centre-back, that's what you can measure. Whereas the Ezri Konsa types who sort of stay in the shadows and then, make a tackle right at the end, or never have to make a tackle because they're in the right position to start with, they don't get the love when it comes to the stats. I say all that to say that I think FOTMOB loves a central midfielder that does a bit of everything, right? And fair play, because I love a central midfielder that does a bit of everything. Lee Evans is that for Blackpool this season. I've actually watched a couple of games under Bruce where it feels like Lee Evans is the only midfielder in the team. It's like 4 defenders, Lee Evans, and then vibes in front of him. So it's quite a difficult position to play, but he's doing very, very well. A second highest rated player is Louis Barry. Unsurprisingly, his shot map is an absolute work of art on the FOTMOB app. Lewis Wing, you could say the same about Reading's central midfielder. What a player he's developed into. He could always score from range from the minute he was spawned as a youngster at Borough. But I always thought he was lacking when it came to creative passing, progressive passing, but also the kind of off-the-ball stuff. And God, he's worked hard at those two things, because now his numbers are popping in League One for creative stuff and also for ball-winning stuff. A real leader for Reading, and an exceptional League One player now for sure, who deserves another shot at the Championship, which I'm really excited about. Tomoki Iwata is number 4. No surprise, just oozes class in midfield for Birmingham. Scored some great goals with both feet from the edge of the box. Just gives them that kind of extra threat, as if they needed more. And number 5 is Owen O'Connell, Wrexham centre-back. Definitely not one of Wrexham's more heralded players, but I think perfect centre-back for Phil Parkinson's system, because he is both a very dominant front-footed defender with headers and tackles and things like that, but also plays a lovely long pass and starts most of their attacks, to be honest, with diags out wide or into Big Ollie Palmer. So O'Connell, massive player for Wrexham, 5th highest rated League One player per FOTMOB. Just outside, Paulie O'Connor, Luca Connell of Lincoln and Barnsley respectively, but that's our top 5. Download FOTMOB using the link in the show notes. David, download it now.
Right then, you massive nerd. League 2. You called yourself that so I can use it. And we both know that's so untrue, because you are the coolest man I've met in the last 2 hours. Newport MK Dons 6-3. What on earth happened? You've got 2 hat-tricks. Bryn Morris, by virtue of my very quick maths, I presume he got the match ball, because Bobby Camworth completed his hat-trick in the 81st minute. Bryn Morris was done and dusted by 36 minutes.
Okay, interesting, because I'd go the other way, because I'm a massive nerd. This is how you know someone's a real nerd, David.
Go on.
I don't recognise penalty goals.
You are awful.
Bobby Camworth scored 3 open play goals, and Bryn Morris scored 2. One of them an absolute perler, but his third was from the spot. They gave him that hat trick.
That is amazing.
Gift, whereas Camworth had to make it all for himself.
That is amazing.
What an absurd football match! Such a joy. I'm genuinely pissed off that that Liverpool Tottenham finished 6-3 as well. Just completely stole the thunder of Newport 6 MK 3. What I love most about this is, Newport are just on it from the first whistle, and MK aren't, and you can see that because they're a little bit sloppy with their passing out from the back, which leads to some early goals. They just keep going and keep going, and then at just before half time, MK pull one back and it's 4-1. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe MK will have the wind in the second half. Maybe it's one of those games which I think is probably more applicable to Sunday League than it is professional football. But Sunday League, like, if it's really, really windy and it is blowing directly vertically one way down the pitch, it's really, really difficult. Like, it is just hard. And if you're the team with the wind, you think you're playing unbelievably well. You're like, we are all over these.
And we're ready quick.
Yeah, half time, you're like, lads, this is probably our best performance of the season. And then at full time, when you haven't got out of your own half, you're like, what could possibly have happened there? Why did our own performance level drop? And it's nothing to do with that. It's just wind. So I thought maybe MK would have the wind and they could come roaring back. And instead, Camworth streaked clear and scored after 47 minutes to make it 5-2. 5-1 rather. It got back to 5-3, and again you're a bit like, MK do have goals in them. If they could get another one, it could get nervy. Camworth again, kind of one-man wrecking ball on the break, scoring a brilliant goal. So just pleasing for Newport. I think their performance level's been pretty poor for the last couple of months, and results had just started to move in line with that after they picked up quite a lot of points early on in the campaign. So just a great day out to absolutely smash one of the top teams in the division, and someone like Camworth in particular, when he plays like this, looks so dangerous. But let's not forget that he has had a very quiet month or two, so hopefully gets a bit of rhythm.
Certainly game of the weekend contender there. Barrow beat Fleetwood 2-0, so it's 3 points for Barrow, and the end of the line for Charlie Adam.
Yes.
Just under a year in charge, Ali.
Yeah, 2 first names, Charlie Adam, and tough weekend for him because he's been sacked by Fleetwood. And I mean, firstly on the game, it's a big win for Barrow. They had 9 without before then. I can't pretend I'm excited about the manner of it. I talked about wind-assisted corners. I mean, both of these goals were set pieces that were bundled in, and on the
very ugly goals.
We know it can get blustery. Yeah. So not much in the game really, other than just 2 early set piece goals, and that was that. But I think maybe the manner of Fleetwood's inability to come back and their lack of certainty in their performances in recent weeks, and they've pulled the trigger. Charlie Adam, as George was at pains to point out, he came into Fleetwood in the relegation zone. They had a good performance level under him. They almost stayed up. George felt they could therefore, if they could maintain what was a decent League One performance level, they could challenge the top of this division. I think that's what they expected. Clearly, that's not where they are right now. And I think initially you'd say the performances were fine, the results were poor, and then the performances dropped off. So that's that. What happens with Fleetwood, both in the short and long term, is incredibly up in the air. Their former owner is obviously in jail. His son is the current owner. He's the one on the statement here, making the decision publicly at least, and we don't know which way they'll turn. They've tried a number of different types of manager recently, with Simon Grayson into Lee Johnson, into Scotty Brune, into Charlie Adam. I think they've got quite a lot of good players and some quite interesting young players, so I'm broadly positive if they make a good appointment that they could have a strong second half of the season and go again next year. But equally, the lack of certainty around the place makes me uneasy.
Elsewhere, we saw Walsall beat Harrogate, and a couple of weeks ago Walsall beat Port Vale to then take their place at the very top of League Two. They're now 6 clear with the game in hand.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I love it when this happens. I really, really love it when this happens. And by this, I mean a team that's really good, as Walsall have been since day dot this season, and actually stretching back to the back end of last season. And because no one really saw it coming, and because as a group of players they're not like a Notts County with a load of star names for the level, and even in terms of the manager, like neutrals wouldn't have considered Matt Sadler to be one of the brightest managerial talents. Normally they sort of fade back into the pack, or it's not real, it's not legit. I mean, this couldn't be more legit. 6 points clear with a game in hand. They have been, now we can say definitively, by miles the best team in League Two this season, for their consistency of performance, for their quality both defensively and going forward. and it's just an absolute joy to watch. And Simkin, the Stoke Loney in goal, made a big save here at 1-0 or 2-0. But it's fellow Stoke Loney, Nathan Lowe, who just has my heart. And not just because we interviewed him and he was an absolute delight and he was just great value and had a great sense of humour and was just really up for it, which is, as you know better than me, is just all you ask for an interview.
Absolutely.
But this goal was just beautiful. And so far I'd seen Lowe as having been a really impressive penalty box poacher, showing good instincts to get on the end of chances and to finish them, which is pretty impressive for a 19-year-old. But in the interview, he told me he loves Harry Kane, and in particular, he loves it when Kane drops deep and gets on the ball and does that sort of quarterbacking type thing. Mm-hmm. And I was a bit like, Nathan, you haven't done that though. Like, it's one thing liking it and aspiring to do it, but I've not seen that at all. And it turns out he was just waiting to deploy it because he ball forward.
Teed it up.
Oh, so good. The ball drops to him, 25, 30 yards out. His first touch is really good. There's a little duel with a midfielder that comes to tackle him. He gets on the ball, carries it forward. The technique on the strike, powerful shot, keeping it low into the corner. Absolute, Kane quality, which I love. And I sometimes find myself thinking, Ali, don't go over the top by comparing the best players in the world with a League Two striker who's on loan from Stoke. And then I remember, David, Harry Kane was on loan in League One when he was this age, and now he's Harry Kane. So sometimes you feel like, am I just doing this for effect to get a big name out there, a big name comparison? Well, yes, to an extent, but it's not obscene, it's not absurd, and it's not out the question that players playing in League Two, age 19, can end up being magnificent players of the future.
Well, and everyone's got to start somewhere. That's really the kind of case of that. And you're absolutely right. I don't think it's sensationalist either. It's a barometer. It's something for the listeners to go, oh, well, I know exactly what you mean now by describing him as that type of player. So I think you're absolutely right to do that. Donny 3, Tranmere 1. Rovers shooting themselves in the foot with a sending off. A funnier man than me would say that at a certain point in this game, Rovers had the pants pulled down.
Yes, comedy moment of the week alert. And it's just a bad day for Tranmere centre-backs all round. Tom Davis getting sent off. And Turnbull, I feel really bad for him. I feel bad for him not only because, from a professional footballer's point of view, I'd be impressed with him if he sees the funny side of him being plastered all over the internet, going viral for having his pants pulled down, and everyone leaning into it, right? Like, I saw ITV tweet the clip, I saw Sky Sports tweet the clip. It's funny. It's funny. Molyneux is trying to wriggle clear of him, and he grabs something, and it just happens to be Turnbull's shorts, and he pulls him down, and it's made worse by the fact that Turnbull's reaction is like pure shock, and he just stands still with his trousers down, and Molyneux scampers clear, and Doncaster end up scoring. So it's a tough scene for Turnbull. Is it maybe a foul? Like, if I pull your...
Yeah.
If I pull your shirt, it's probably a foul. If I pull your shorts down, it's surely an infringement. It's absolutely an invasion of privacy.
Civil liberty, I think. But you're absolutely right to look at. I mean, I've been involved in those games where it's bad day at Black Rock, because when you see Tom Davies get sent off and his first reaction is not to berate the referee but to go after Luke McGee and goal, you know for a fact that that's going to kick off when you get back, because he's going, you should have been coming out, you should have been doing that, and he's so pent up. But yeah, for it to end up with that, but to get Donny back into the top three, it's again very good work being done there. Chesterfield 1, Wimbledon 0. 3 wins in a row for the first time this season. Speaking of 3, it was 3 goals in 4 minutes for Notts County against Bradford City.
Yes, wins for teams now nestled in the top 7 at Christmas. Chesterfield, the one thing stopping them from being legit top 3 contenders was this weird inability to see games out at home, just drawing or even losing games when they clearly had the better of it, and they're just, it's just in the details really. So to have won 3 in a row, to see out a game against a really good opposition at home bodes really well. Dobra with a brilliant finish, sort of left foot guided volley into the top corner. Always nice when there's players playing in non-league that we as EFL guys get told, like, watch out, this guy's coming, and he's really, really good. And you get that thing, like, I don't know if you have it, maybe I'm just a bit weird, when a mate of yours says, oh, I can't wait for you to meet this guy, you're going to really like him, you guys will get on well. There's a part of you that's like, well, I'll be the judge of that. What do you mean?
I'm right on.
What are you
Maybe
talking
I
about?
won't. Maybe I'll hate him. Maybe
sounds,
I'm
you know
real.
what? He sounds terrible, to be honest. Don't want to meet him.
Maybe you saying that means I don't want to like him already, even he might be lovely. That's more where I'm coming from.
Yeah, my football equivalent is that with non-league players who I get told they're really good. They're coming to the EFL. They're gonna thrive. And there's so many this season, like Jamie Jellis of Walsall, Jordan Thomas of Cheltenham. So the people I talk to who really know their stuff, they are generally correct. Dobra is the latest. Really good. He's a goal threat from the number 10 role. He dribbles, he wins fouls, he works hard out of possession. Just an excellent player. Winning the game for Chesterfield. And Notts scored 3 and 4 minutes against Bradford, who just crumbled, really. Notts County needed it. First win since 26th of October. It's quite impressive that they're 7th in the table, given that almost 2 months without a win. Crowley was at the heart of those goals and this good spell where they scored 3. Notable that he'd given the ball away against Salford last week in the lead up to Salford's opener, trying to play short and dropping really deep. Here he just did all his work in the final third or the middle and final third, and that's where he's at his most potent. So setting up Jata, who then set up McGoldrick, and then Jata scoring a third. Nice golden boot race developing in League 2, by the way. Perhaps Michael Cheek and Matty Stevens joint top on 11. Yep. Nathan Lowe and Andy Cook on 10. And then Jata and Gilby on 9, with Grigg, McGoldrick and Smith of Swindon on 8. So that's something that's going to keep me going during the cold winter. For Bradford fans, it's just like it's a very familiar feeling, I think, where they're like, oh, yeah, we're probably not getting promoted again.
Too long at this level. Yeah. Too long at this level for them. He's mentioned David McGoldrick there as well, a player that I came across as a very, he was a young starlet at Southampton. He went on to do well. Gareth Bell went on to do well. Adam Lallana went on to do very well. There's so many. I don't want to take credit for every single one of them by showing them what not to do to have a very long career. But he continues to score goals, and just a wonderful fella. A very good teammate, and long may that continue. Swindon 3, Grimsby Town 1. On the one hand, Ian Holloway, 1,000 games as a manager. That's a wonderful achievement, and we know Ollie well. He's always been good company, and what a career that he can be very, very proud of. Fan protests, though, in and around the kind of narrative of the game. Can you get us up to speed with that, please?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, impressive turnout from Swindon fans who want to make their voices heard. This is a protest against the governance of the club, and the man at the top of the tree is Clem Morfuni. But it's about those that he has employed to help him run the club, and the fans, as they perceive it, are very, very clear that the footballing decisions, both in terms of on-pitch stuff, which you can measure pretty well by the fact that they have tumbled down the pyramid and are at risk of being relegated to non-league, but also loads of off-field stuff, the sort of thing that other sets of fans might not know about or wouldn't care so much about. Just consistent behaviours, appointments, communication, or specifically lack thereof, that leads them to being really concerned about the way that those running the club are doing that. It needs to be made clear this isn't about money. There's never been a question of funding necessarily, as is sometimes the case. And it's not specifically to do with we're doing badly and we're going to protest that the team is bad. Yeah. It's not about that in terms of the short term. In the words of Swindon fan Richard on NTT20 Squad, it's become clear that Clem and the people he has employed are not competent enough to run to the football club. That's the fans' view. The evidence for this over the past 3.5 years has shown this to be a fact, and we can't accept that this is good enough or that it can continue. Again, the view of the fans here. The expressed aim of the Spirit of 69 supporter group who've organised this march is to get Clem Morfuni to make a public declaration that the club is for sale. So that is what the fans want, and they are exercising their right to make that very, very clear. They did so with bright orange bobble hats, which was a great visual. And then they got in the ground and they watched their team beat Grimsby 3-1. Good performance. Ollie Clark's been excellent under Holloway. The performance of Shimanga up front was exciting. 2 good finishes and hit the post as well. If you feel like if him and Harry Smith can develop a partnership, that's going to be Swindon having one of the most exciting front twos in the league, both goal scorers as well. And obviously at the heart of it as well, Ian Holloway beating his former club. No love lost there with the Grimsby fans, and celebrating his 1,000th game as a manager, which is just incredible longevity.
It's wonderful to see from Ollie, and that's the key thing about this, just to kind of pat you on the back there in a non-condescending way. Nuance nuance is so important in football, detail is so important in football reporting, and you could look at the Swindon Town situation, make a snap decision on what you think you're seeing without knowing full well what's going on. You've explained it wonderfully, Ali. Thank you very much for that. Two teams trending upwards. Salford beating Accrington 2-0. Bromley, EFL new boys, Bromley, I'm sure they're sick of being spoken about that all the time, beating Morecambe 2-0. Salford City are a team that are owned by very wealthy men. Should they be doing better? Should they be doing a Stockport? Should they be doing a Wrexham? Please tell me.
Well, the odds are in their favour if they wanted to do a Stockport or a Wrexham. It feels like they could more easily than some of the other teams at the level. But clearly, in what is maybe now 5 years at the level, they have not done that. Under Carl Robinson, you always felt like there was a good chance that he could build a really good team, because I think we've seen him do that before a number of times. There's also the chance that it can all end in tears. And that is how it works in football, right? At the moment, it's kind of almost gone the opposite way than I was expecting. It started quite poorly, and I was pretty worried about Salford after a month of the season, but he's got them rolling. And first and foremost, the defence is looking really watertight, and then they've just got loads of match winners. Kelly Namize has done really well this season at times. They've got Adelakun, who still hasn't kind of stood out in a Salford shirt, but can be pretty clear in the second half of the season. If he gets and stays fit, he can do similar things to what he did with Donny last season. It's actually Tyrese Forner on loan from Derby that kind of stands out every time I watch highlights. Not least because he's just a big unit in the centre of the park, and he's not just a lump. He's a ball carrier, and it's great to watch when he's in full flow, just slicing through the heart of midfield and carrying Salford from midfield into the final third. And he set up the first goal here. Stockton with 4 in 4. All the names just make you feel like this should be a team challenging for top 7. And if they continue this form, it won't be long till they're in and indeed around it. Bromley, unbeaten in 9 now. Loads of draws this season. It just kind of solidifies the fact that they are, I call them low margin FC. They just absolutely love to boil the game down to very little, and they're so comfortable in that state. It's how they got promoted out of the National League without one of the bigger budgets. It's how they're uber competitive again, barely losing any games in the 4th tier. And Morecambe almost the opposite of that, where somewhat of a surprise, Derek Adams just hasn't yet been able to build a Derek Adams Morecambe team. They look really uncomfortable in tight games, and you never really feel that they're going to end up on the right side of them. It's a terrible home record, the worst in the top 4 tiers. So yeah, big ups to Bromley. Morecambe, at the moment, they are clearly the worst team in the league. They are at the bottom of the league. And there's always that aspect of Derek Adams and Morecambe where you feel like there's going to be some fight coming.
Just to put in on this before we do this last bit, have you got something to say on Gillingham-Cheltenham?
Not really.
Good. All right then, let's get to this. Gillingham 2, Cheltenham 2. Both teams led in what turned out, of course, to be a 2-2 draw. And this is what I've been looking forward to. Port Vale 0, Carlisle 0 was a match that happened, as was Crewe 0, Colchester 0. You're very welcome.
Why are you putting that voice on? Why are you doing the wanky voice? Is that me? Is that your me?
It's an homage. It's not a pastiche. It's not a parody. It's done with nothing less than love and respect. I was waiting to say it. You let me say it. I love you.
Thank you. Yeah, good to have a couple of matches that happened in any given weekend. FOTMOB's top 5 League 2 players. Before we go, Dan Crowley, number 1. Imperious, impish, just magnificent. Love watching Dan Crowley. Number 2, Nathan Lowe, as discussed, a young Harry Kane. Would have enjoyed his goal on the weekend. I haven't seen a young loanee look so far above this specific level since Elliot Anderson was playing for Bristol Rovers a couple of years ago. Mickey Dimitriou is number 3, an absolute colossus at the back for Crewe Alex. Alistair Smith is rated number 4. A little bit underrated, I think, under-discussed this season. Smith in midfield for Wimbledon. Perfect team for him to play for. Smith is brilliant ball winner. He can crash the box and be a goal threat. He's not someone that you want making 60 passes a game, and he's not asked to do that in this Wimbledon team. So really playing to his strengths, and unsurprisingly, he is thriving at this level. And rounding out the top 5, another centre-back, Joseph Olowu, who's come on so well for Donny. They've put a good few years of development into him, and he's just finally, it feels like he's clicked a bit. Gone are the mistakes, and what's left is just this brilliant defender for this level. Quick to cover ground, pretty dominant physically, decent on the ball, if not expansive. He's really matured into one of the better defenders in the division. He's only 25, and I note that his contract is up in the summer, which puts Donny in such an awkward situation, because League One clubs will be looking at him. His data this season is off the charts, and it's just like, we've got no interest in losing one of our key players when we're trying to gun for promotion, but because he's over 24 now, they'll get no compensation if he leaves for free in the summer. So I think it's a really tough situation for League Two clubs to be in. They'll feel like they've put a lot of time and effort into his development over 3 years, and they might end up losing him for nothing, but that is the way of the game, isn't it? Whatever the case is, he's been excellent. Fifth highest rated player per FOTMOB. Just outside the top five, Joe Tomlinson of MK, Max Clark of Gills, and of course Taylor Allen of Walsall. Please do download FOTMOB if you haven't already, using the link in the show notes. Thank you, David, and happy Christmas.
I've enjoyed it. Bucket list moment ticked off. Thank you so much. I love what you do. I love you both very, very dearly. And to see your dizzying ascents coupled with awards being won, it makes me feel very proud and warm inside.
Stop it right now. Did you ever play at Wembley?
I did.
And at Old Trafford?
I was a sub at Old Trafford.
Okay.
Does that count?
Well, I'm just thinking how ridiculous it is to say that guest hosting Not the Top 20 would be on a bucket list of someone who's played football at Wembley
I'm
professionally.
a 43-year-old man. Our aspirations and ambitions get smaller as we get older. as we start to bend over and stare at our shoes, this is what happens, my friend. But
I'm gonna say goodbye by plugging your podcast about motorbikes, because I've never listened to it and I never will. But I think it's important that anyone listening to this who's interested in motorbikes, if you don't know about Prutz's pod with is it
you and Thomas?
You and Thomas. I was going to say Ian Roberts, the old Norwich striker.
Imagine.
Get him on, I think. But I don't want it to come across like I'm taking the piss, but we do.
I mean, you do when you have. So.
We are jocular with each other. I couldn't help but have a giggle when, I don't know if you shared it on Insta or something, but there was a reel the other day. You and Ewan were doing a little bit of social media content. We all get tempted to do it sometimes. Oh, why don't you do a top 5 or a blind ranking, because it'll be great for social. That's what someone said to you, and the clip was you guys going like, "What's your favourite ever motorbike?" And I was like, for someone who knows nothing about motorbikes, that's exactly how I imagine every conversation to be. Like, I liked that one because it was big and powerful.
And it had big tyres, and I love the colour of it. And look at the handlebars. That is almost the extent of what it is. It's a passion project. I mean, so it's with you and Thomas. It's called Full Chat. I mean, we've had a broad spectrum of different people on, the likes of George Clark and Nick Knowles, and so therein lies that you can judge what it sounds like by me telling you that, can't you? I mean, I don't think that's going to drag you in anymore, but it's a little bit of a sideline to talking about football. Ewan's lovely, bonkers, but lovely. And it gives it a bit of cachet, given people know who he is and no one's got a clue who I am. So it's a nice balance. But thank you for that very arse-about-face plug for something that you've got zero interest in.
It's my absolute pleasure. It's part of the professional service that you get.
Part of the package of being co-host.
David, you've been the sort of final boss in what has been such a fun sequence of guest hosts on the Not the Top 20 Monday pod. I hope, and I can only hope, that the listeners have enjoyed hearing some different voices, all of them really passionate as we are about the EFL, and incredible professionals as well, to a person. So we are so grateful to everyone that's given up their Mondays to chat with us. We will be back on the Monday pod on the 6th of January. It's going to be an absolute festive recap bonanza. I think there'll be 4 game weeks to talk about, but we are going to miss next Monday. So spending a little bit of time with our tiny babies. And then we will also have a betting show later this week. That'll go out on Saturday, the 28th, ahead of the games on the 29th. Big thanks and big ups to David Prutton and the Sky Sports EFL team that will keep me entertained with about 1 million live games over the next couple of weeks. Thank you for putting in the amount of work that you guys do over Christmas. I know how busy that schedule is. I've done a lot of that in previous years, and it doesn't always feel great, does it, leaving home on Boxing Day morning to go to work? But the camaraderie of the team normally makes it good.
And hopefully it's us ripping it up again at some stage.
You're a wonderful man. Thank you, David, and go well.